So in case you don't know who Dr. Joel Fuhrman is, I'm going to read the pro forma bio, and then I think Asha would like to say something special, and maybe I'll throw in a few more words. Joel Fuhrman, MD, is a board-certified family physician, best-selling author, and nutritional researcher who specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional methods. He's the author of 11 books, 6 that have been on the New York Times bestseller list. Dr. Fuhrman has appeared on hundreds of radio and television shows, including The Today Show, Good Morning America, Live with Kelly, and The Dr. Oz Show. His PBS television shows were some of the top fundraising shows for PBS, not only raising over $35 million, but have improved the health of millions of Americans. Dr. Fuhrman presently serves as the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation and has published multiple scientific articles. His foundational discoveries on food addiction and human hunger were published in the scientific journal Nutrition Journal in November 2010. Dr. Fuhrman is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine. He is a former world-class figure skater, 3rd in the World Professional Pair Championships in 1976. And if any of you have ever gone to YouTube and seen a more recent clip of Dr. Fuhrman skating and doing, I don't know what they call it, a double camel, whatever he's doing on the ice, it is quite impressive. He works with corporations to improve employee health and reduce medical costs, and also at medical conferences and hospital grand rounds to educate physicians like me. Asha Gala.
And like me too. So I met Dr. Fuhrman the first time in 1995. I went with my daughter who had severe allergies, and I was sitting. Little did I know that I'm truly honored to be here to welcome you. He wrote on his prescription pad, I remember I still have that paper, he said, fruits and vegetables, that's all he wrote. And I looked at him, I said, what? And he said, yeah. I'm like, I was like a little bummed. I'm thinking, what kind of a guy this is? What doctor am I going to? It really bothered me. And he says, no, fruits and vegetables. So I said, okay, I trusted. I went back. And my daughter had ear infection. And I must have called that office every week because Dr. Fuhrman had said she doesn't need an antibiotic, just change her diet. And I must have annoyed them. I don't think you remember that. And you spoke to me a couple of times, Asha, it's okay, you don't need to. And it was amazing. In 6 weeks, her ear infection cleared up. And then I said, oh my gosh, I've really found a gold mine. I really feel that today. It is an honor to have you here and actually stand here with, Dr. Fuhrman. We can start.
Thank you. So I've known you for like 20 years now, right?
Yes. Yeah. I know, yeah, it's like 1995, so it's 20 years.
More than 20 years we've known each other. Wow.
And I can tell you, once he was our family doctor, I don't think we turned back. We kept going until, unfortunately or fortunately, I ran into Dr. Ron Weiss. And then I kind of, But today I feel truly honored that I have 2 amazing mentors. Everything that I've learned, everything that I share with everybody, each and every patient that we work with, all of that credit goes to him. I've learned a lot from you. Thank you for everything.
Every year, they give out a Nobel Prize in medicine. And I've often thought that as a physician, in this difficult world we live in, that Joel Fuhrman personifies what it is to be a physician. And that is illustrated in the countless times I know that he has dedicated his own life to the service of human beings, sometimes with disregard for his own. And, you know, I am a professor at the medical school, but even sometimes professors need a little help. And in our most difficult cases, whenever I call this man, it doesn't matter if it's a Sunday or in the middle of the night or afternoon or morning or 7 days a week, he always answers the phone immediately and always gives us the advice we need from his deep well of experience. So if you are our patient here, the soul of Joel Fuhrman kind of flows through you to some extent. So I want to thank you for coming here. And now for the best part.
Music. Oh, I'm on over here. Wow, that was so touching. So really appreciate that. Well, thanks for all of you for coming. So exciting. To see such remarkable transformations occurring right in our own backyard, right? Isn't this wonderful? And such an incredible, whatever you put together, phenomenal. Just phenomenal. So proud. Okay, so let's get started. This presentation is basically about slowing aging, living super healthy to 100 years old. And the side effect of that is that when you live in a manner to maximize the body's health span, lifespan, and play span, right? To play and enjoy your life as you age. Therapeutically, those same techniques are effective in reversing disease and can work therapeutically so people can get well from what are considered chronic conditions that the medical profession has no answer for. Their only answer is to put people on carcinogenic medications that usually they're dangerous, have serious side effects, and keep people ill and suffering for the rest of their lives. And so this is really truly a message of hope. It's a message of happiness and joy that we're in charge of our health destiny, and we don't have to live our life in fear, with suffering, and with losing our mental faculties and physical abilities as we age. We can really have a great life and enjoy our later years. And as we get older, we can still have a lot of fun and enjoyment, be able to be physically active and mentally alert and have our full mental faculties intact. So it's a great opportunity and a great blessing we have in human history. This is an unprecedented opportunity in human history. Because what I'm saying right now is that a blue zone diet, or the blue zones around the world, are areas of the world where people live longer and more centenarians. But those are not ideal diets, because they're just eating haphazardly what happens to be the diets of their ancestors or diets in the area, and they do better than other areas do, and that's pretty good, and we can learn from those areas. But with these advances in nutritional science that we've accumulated over the last few decades, we can check off every box that adds to human longevity and health and do considerably better than the blue zones have around the world in the past. So what I'm saying right now is we're at a completely different stage of scientific and nutritional sophistication. We can really elevate a person's opportunity to get well, to stay well, and to have a great life. I mean, we never had, for example, in a blue zone, you can't get like wild blueberries in the wintertime and fresh salad and baby greens all year round, things like that. And, they're not eating sprouts. And the point is that with the proper knowledge, it's a great opportunity that people should take advantage of. And while that opportunity is available to us, at the same time, we have the most overweight, sickly, cancer-prone population in the history of the world and anywhere in the world. And so you can take your choice. And before I start the lecture, I just want to say that the choice to be healthy is really exciting and delicious. And it really increases your taste and your smell and your ability to be creative and to learn how to make healthy foods taste great. And even that part of it even the part about the food is more enjoyable than eating conventionally as well. This is not about giving up and sacrificing pleasure. It's about enhancing your pleasure in life, and even your enhancing in pleasure of eating. So that's called a no-brainer to me, you know. All right, let's get started. So to start out, I want to describe the foundational principle of a nutritarian diet. I coined that term nutritarian to describe a diet rich in nutrients with all the features that will extend human lifespan. And the foundational principle which we're going to talk about, the foundational principle talks about the relationship between macronutrients and micronutrients. Because macronutrients are those nutrients that contain calories, like fat, carbohydrate, and protein. And we know that the American population, and most of the modern world today, is eating too many macronutrients, too much fat, too much carbohydrate, and too much protein. And we know that as you overeat calories, it shortens your life. So the first thing I'm telling you is that the more calories you consume in your life, the shorter you live. And the foundational principle of a nutritarian diet, and the most important principle, is this. And I want you to write it down or memorize it or say it over and over again, because it's the most important thing you're going to hear today. And that is moderate caloric restriction in the context of micronutrient excellence. Micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, those non-caloric portions of food. And by excellence, we mean an adequate exposure to all the micronutrients we need, and the full symphony, the full breadth of being exposed to every nutrient humans need, that the human body needs, and there are thousands of them. You know, a piece of broccoli has more than 700 different nutrients in it. They say the most protective nutrient in broccoli that's most associated with longer life is called broccoli. Most of those haven't even been named yet. But so I'm saying right now, and I'm repeating myself on purpose, that the only proven methodology to slow aging, the only proven methodology to slow aging is moderate caloric restriction in the environment of micronutrient excellence. That's it. All species of animals, primates, humans, and that fat on the body is particularly damaging to your well-being and lifespan. Almost any extra fat on your body accelerates aging. Let me describe that just for a minute, okay? Go over that a minute. Because fat cells are tissue that's not normal, and it doesn't get a huge blood supply. Our kidney is well perfused with blood vessels. Our heart has 1 million coronary arteries and tributaries and capillaries. But our fat tissue is struggling to get its blood supply. It secretes angiogenesis promoters to help claim a blood supply. Fat cells promote and secrete substances. Toxic waste products come out of the fat supply. So one of the hormones secreted by the fat are angiogenesis promoters, and the word angiogenesis means to promote the growth of blood vessels so the fat could be fed and it can grow more, because the fat needs nourishment from glucose and from oxygen to grow. So certain hormones promote the growth of fat and promote the growth of angiogenesis. And one of the most powerful fat-promoting, angiogenesis-promoting hormones is called insulin. So the more sugar you eat, the more white flour, the more white bread, the more honey, maple syrup, the more you're eating your pizza and your bagels and your white bread, those foods are accelerating your death because they're producing more insulin, which then promotes more angiogenesis, fat growth. And then the fat growth, which permits angiogenesis, allows other parts of the body to replicate faster and to get a new blood supply so they can have abnormal cellular replication, permitting cancer to grow and develop. Your fat cells, this combination between fat, insulin, and refined carbohydrates are very permissive to allow cancer to replicate on the body. Now, because fat cells are struggling to get oxygen, they secrete more reactive oxygen species and free radicals. more toxins are produced by the fat cells than other parts of the body because they don't have enough fat, enough oxygen, enough blood vessel supply to be able to keep themselves clean and repair themselves and heal. And they're secreting pro-inflammatory substances like lipokines and cytokines. And in the process of secreting the fat cells as we're talking about, these pro-inflammatory toxins and more free radicals called reactive oxygen species, that activates another series of hormones in the body called aromatase promoters. Now, aromatase are a series of enzymes that make more estrogen. So now I'm saying that when you eat foods that promote fat and insulin, you automatically have much higher levels of estrogen because fat cells are the primary driver of estrogen production. And a person who's overweight, for example, fatty infiltration of their body with fatty infiltration of the breast tissue, could have 10 times as much estrogen exposure in the breast tissue compared to a woman who's slim and maybe eating more carefully without without high insulin promoting foods. Now, fat cells do more dangerous things than we just mentioned, because they block the uptake of insulin. So now the insulin that we need to produce, that the pancreas needs to produce to drive the glucose out of the bloodstream, the body has to produce 5 times to 10 times as much, because fat cells block muscle cells and other parts of the body that need glucose. It blocks the insulin uptake, so now the pancreas has to secrete higher amounts of insulin. So here I am at about 150 pounds. My body utilizes and produces, let's say, about 15 units of insulin a day. But should I become 160 pounds, and I add 10 pounds of fat onto my naturally 150-pound frame, now the 15 units of insulin is not sufficient. I'm going to need 25 units of insulin just to handle 10 more pounds of fat in my body. Should I become 175 pounds with 25 pounds of insulin, 20 pounds of fat on my 150 pounds body, instead of the 15 units of insulin, I might need 50 units of insulin a day. 50 units a day. And as I explained earlier, insulin has growth-promoting effects, angiogenesis promotion effects, cellular replication effects, and other effects that accumulate that have negative effects on the body in general. So right now, I'm starting out this presentation with explaining that the first principle of nutritarian diet is represented by the equation H equals N over C, which means your healthy life expectancy, how healthy you're going to be in your later years, is dependent on your lifetime exposure to micronutrients over calories. Means we're looking to eat a diet style with a high micronutrient bang per caloric buck. Also because what I'm saying here is that when you eat sufficient micronutrients and fiber, it naturally suppresses your appetite, so you no longer become a calorie-consuming monster. The opposite is true, because when your diet doesn't have enough fiber and micronutrients in it, you become a calorie-consuming monster. You can't control your caloric drive and your appestat when your diet is inadequate. It's impossible. You know, it's funny how you can put like a little animal in a scientific experiment, and you can control their body weight just by what you feed them. In other words, you feed the animal its natural food that it would eat in the natural jungle or wild, and the animal will eat the perfect amount of food to maintain its perfect weight and its perfect health. But you switch them onto cheese doodles and donuts, and these frankenfoods are designed to induce overeating. The animal will stop eating its natural foods and it will just eat these processed foods exclusively, blowing themselves up into be overweight and shorten their lifespan tremendously. It's like, I remember the study they did with canaries and cocaine. They gave it sugar water, they gave it nutrients or cocaine, and the canary kept going for the cocaine on every hit. It never went for food until in a few weeks it starved itself to death, and the last thing it did before it died was hit one more hit of the cocaine. It didn't know to go after the food to keep alive. It just went for the most stimulation for the brain. You've probably tried the experiment with your children. Really? People, because the child naturally will like push the food away when they've had enough natural foods. They'll eat the asparagus and the pineapple and the squash, right? They'll eat whatever you distill. They'll be eating the, right? The kid will be eating the peas and eating whatever it's supposed to be eating. But then the parents saying, well, he's not big as Johnny up the street. He doesn't look big enough or plump enough or healthy enough. I got to give him something else to entice him to eat more. Because the kid's like pushing the food away, staying nice and slim. So the parent then will try to entice him to eat more and have to use French fries, goldfish, you know, whatever it is they're feeding them. I don't even know what goldfish are, but I know parents feed their kids that. And the child will start eating these highly palatable foods with sugar and salt and that rush into the bloodstream and signify dopamine stimulation of the brain because they flood the bloodstream with calories, with such a rush of calories. And the body, in response to that caloric rush, will stop eating any food except those foods that give it the maximum caloric rush and the maximum flavors of salt and sugar, and then the child will never touch a vegetable again. And the parent will bring their child to the doctor and say, Johnny won't eat vegetables. He's just doing what he's been biologically designed to do. Eat whatever is the most calorically concentrated, heavily flavored food available until he kills himself, right? Until the parent really. Anyway, back to the lecture. So to slow the aging process, when you moderately restrict calories, it enhances cellular repair, it suppresses genetic alterations. Let me say that one more time. When you have like a GSTP1 gene that increases your risk of breast cancer, that genetic alteration doesn't have an opportunity to be expressed. Right? It inhibits the production of cross-linking agent, enhances DNA repair, it removes free toxins, free radicals, right? The major toxins we're talking about that age us are the reactive oxygen species, the buildup of free radicals, and the advanced glycation end products. The AGEs that cause diabetics to become diabetic retinopathy and to lose the function of their kidney and their nerves and to age the body rapidly. We build them up too, those advanced glycation end products, when we eat an American-type diet. And of course, one thing I didn't mention was slowing the metabolic rate. When you eat less calories, it slows your metabolic rate. Your metabolic rate is the rate at which you age. If you want to live to be 100, you have to try to moderately slow down your metabolic rate, because if you're speeding up your metabolic rate, you're aging faster. Let me say that in a different way. Here I am at 150 pounds. Let's just say that my basal metabolic rate, to keep this weight right where it is 1,500 calories a day. Just picking a number because it's a round number. I don't know if that's true or not. Let's just say 1,500 calories. If I start to increase my calories I take in from 1,500 to 1,700 or 1,800, that's 300 extra calories a day times 365 days a year. That's like that's a certain amount of pounds a year. That means I'm going to put on like 6 pounds of weight per year, correct? Not really, because my metabolic rate will speed up as I eat more calories to help burn off some of those calories. It won't want to put it all on as fat, so the more calories I eat, the faster my metabolic rate will go, so all those calories don't turn into fat, so I'll only put on 4 pounds, not 8 pounds. Did you follow me? The metabolic rate could never speed up enough to burn up all the calories you're eating. You'll still gain weight, but not as much. The problem with gaining weight and eating over your metabolic rate is that you not only gain weight, but the increased metabolic rate means you're aging yourself faster at the same time. Did you follow that so far? Now, let's say my basal metabolic needs are 1,500 calories and I eat only 1,400 a day, a little less, okay? Moderately caloric restrict. Do I waste away? Do I become anorexic? Do I lose my muscles and bone mass? What happens to me? Well, that's right. Once you're at your ideal weight, your body works very powerfully not to lose weight and not to get lower. So since I already have relatively low body fat and my regular activities demand a certain amount of muscle and activity, my body is going to be very resistant to more weight loss because I'm already at my favorable weight. So my body will slow down its metabolic rate as I cut back on calories, and in doing so, it'll lower my body temperature to maintain its body weight. It'll lower my thyroid function, and it will lower the respiratory quotient, the amount of calories burnt by breathing, through breathing. It'll make all these biological changes to reduce the metabolic rate, and therefore I'll be aging much slower in that state of reduced caloric intake. So we can say that it's never the case that you can eat more food and speed up your metabolic rate to lose weight. That never can happen. That's a fallacy. Eating more food always makes you gain weight, and eating less food always makes you lose weight. It just becomes very hard to lose too much weight when you cut back on calories unless you excessively caloric restrict. That's why the basic foundational principle of a vegetarian diet is that you moderately caloric restrict, not anorexia. You follow what I'm saying? We're looking to eat less food and to take in less calories without becoming too thin. Did you follow that? The average person out there is trying to speed up the metabolic rate so they can eat more calories and not become fat. Right? Isn't that what you think that the world out there thinks? Matter of fact, by the way, if you look at the normal range of thyroid function, your normal range of free T4, we note that people in the bottom half of free T4, people in the bottom half of thyroid function have half the heart attacks compared to people in the higher rate of thyroid function. Within the normal range, it's better to be in the normal part, the lower part of that. What I'm saying right now is it might be beneficial for your anti-aging doctor to give you thyroid hormone you don't need if you're really overweight and you're looking to help you speed up your metabolic rate so you can lose weight and lower your cholesterol because you're just eating a diet that's so unfavorable. But that's not really going to make you live long. You can't medicate yourself into wellness, even though it might help a teeny bit. But if you really want to live a long time, then you want to not to use artificial substances or medications to push up your metabolic rate. You actually want to have it be a little bit to be lower than normal. So what I'm saying right now, for really optimal health, we don't eat ourselves into excess weight. So we don't need synthetic artificial substances or stimulants to try to make us lose weight. We're looking to do that naturally to keep thin because we've earned it. If you really want to be protected against heart disease and strokes, you have to achieve a normal body weight without the use of gastric bypass or lap bands. You have to achieve a normal blood pressure without the use of medications, and you have to have a normal cholesterol without the use of drugs. You have to have a normal glucose without taking glucose-lowering medication. You have to earn the proper parameters and maintain that from your lifestyle, not to look to medicate yourself to earn those parameters. So you understanding here about slowing the metabolic rate as something favorable? You know, of course, we know that aging, that you'll be, if you're really healthy, you're a little colder in the wintertime, but you tolerate the heat in the summertime much better. You know, you might have to wear a little more clothing. And for every 100 calories increase in metabolic rate, the risk of death generally increases by about 25%, and the same thing is true in the opposite direction. Now, in review of all numerous studies on food and cancer, we find that eating raw vegetables, particularly green vegetables, have the most powerful association with the reduction of cancers of all types. So if I was going to ask you, this group right over here, of course, what is the food that seems to have the most powerful association with reduction of all types of cancer, what would that food be? Right, it would be, that's probably right. It would be some type of green, leafy, cruciferous, kale, collards, mustard greens, bok, like something, but you know, something in that family. Okay, so let's go on to, so it's pretty evident that that eating salad and eating some raw vegetables are powerfully lifespan enhancing. One of my mantras is eat a salad at least once a day as a main dish. How many of you eat a salad at least once a day as a main dish? I try to do that most every day. Now, what if I asked you guys, what's the food most associated with lower rates of heart attacks and strokes? Not cancer and not kale, but what's the food that is most protected against your heart, your blood vessel health, your endothelium? What food is that? Kale. Right. Raw, green, cruciferous vegetables. In other words, the most protective lifespan enhancing food generally are green vegetables. We're a green vegetable dependent animal, just like other primates are. Which all primates eat a huge amount of greens, and we need greens to be healthy. If you don't like greens, don't want to eat greens, then I propose that you maybe should live close to a hospital. Not that that's going to help you anyway. Maybe psychologically you'll feel better. As vegetable portions a day increase, intravascular inflammation decreases, function and elasticity increase. We have medical technology. We can measure a person's risk of a heart attack pretty accurately with all these new inflammatory modules, myeloperoxidase, oxidized LDL, HSCRPs. We have a whole way we can look at people and tell if they're high risk of heart attacks. When you put a person on a diet that's really designed to keep the body healthy, those things in a very short period of time, like 2 weeks, almost disappear. The oxidized LDL drops down, the myeloperoxidase goes back to normal. It's just amazing how it's so unnatural to get cancer and to have heart disease. In other words, more green vegetables, less DNA methylation, low risk of cancer. Methylation defects are now measurable in scientific studies and research projects. We can measure a person's propensity for cancer by tracking how much methylation defects they have in their DNA, and we can see that those people who start to eat a lot of green vegetables, the methylation defects go away. As a matter of fact, in the Fiji Islands, they smoke like fiends over there and have almost no lung cancer. Whereas in the Hawaiian Islanders of the same Polynesian descent, they don't smoke as much, but they have much higher risk of cancer, of lung cancer, because they don't eat as many green vegetables in Hawaii as they do in Fiji. But so we know right now, we're looking at the studies on how vegetables prevent cancer. In other words, what I'm saying right now is we've landed the man on the moon already. You know what I mean by we've landed the man on the moon already? I mean that we know how to win the war on cancer. We already have it licked. People just don't like the answer we found. They're looking for a different answer. They don't want to they're like looking for a pill that they can smoke 3 packs a day and not get lung cancer. Or they can have a pill they can take so they can still eat pizza and bagels and pasta and not get breast cancer. Never going to happen. If you want to not get cancer, you have to eat a lot of vegetables. And what percent of American diet is vegetables? 2%. A primate eating 2%. What's that?
Which includes fries and tomato fries.
Yeah, which includes French fries. Right. No. Well, actually, not really. In this slide, it doesn't, because in this slide, I took the potatoes out and made it a separate category. It's amazing what Americans eat. I always say, this is the diet designed by ISIS. On my PBS television show, I said, just so you know, I know the joke, the bad joke on the show was not really me saying that, because I said, this diet's been designed by Al-Qaeda on television, in the filming of the show. Then they took out my voice, and in the show, they changed it so it said on the television, this diet's been designed by Darth Vader. That was not my joke. I don't know what was so offensive about saying Al-Qaeda, but maybe they were saving my life from being murdered. I don't know what they were doing. So I have a new iPhone app that it's fun to play with. I think I'll do it right now for a little bit. So I have a new iPhone app called Nutri IQ, if anybody's interested, where you can actually, put in what you ate for lunch or something, or what you ate, and you could get some numbers added up of how many IQ points you get. So consider you're smart or brilliant. It's a fun game for kids because they say, oh, I'll eat a strawberry and get like 25 points and get a Nutri-coin or some kind of ring or whatever. So it's just we started to put together the app in the early phase of this app. But the point I'm showing to you now, of course, is to show that as we eat a certain amount of food, a certain amount of beans and greens and mushrooms and onions and seeds and berries, we get lots of nutrients that work like a symphony orchestra, like having every trumpet and violin and different instrument playing, because when you have a lot of different phytonutrients working together, it's more effective than just consuming one. Right? So we want to get a nice variety of plant phytochemicals and a wide variety of colorful plant foods into our diet. Therefore, I encourage that with that acronym GBOMS, right? The greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds, that people try to eat a wide variety of food and don't just stick on a high-grain diet, where they try to get a nice wide variety of different plant foods into their diet. And these high-volume foods that have a lot of fiber and occupy space in the stomach and are all naturally low in calories are our most favorable foods to encourage people and make it easy for them to get to their ideal weight. Because these foods are just naturally so low in calories. Raw vegetables like snow pea pods and beets and raw cabbage and carrots and fresh fruits, and berries and apples and grapefruits and melons and papaya, and cooked green vegetables and the non-green low starchy vegetables like mushroom, eggplant, peppers, onions, and cauliflower. These foods we can eat abundantly and still to maintain very low caloric concentration of the meal. And the stomach only holds a liter of food anyway. You can't put probably more than 300 or 400 calories into the stomach once you're choosing a lot of low-calorie foods. It's impossible to become overweight. You know, you can put oil in the food in there. You can fit 4,000 calories in. Put a lot of chicken in, you can put, 2,000 calories at a time. But with vegetables and a lot of greens, you can't put that many calories in. So if you're living in a natural habitat and scouring for foods in the woods and trying to eat foods in a natural place, you'd be looking for all roughage. And there is a lot of food you can eat natural in this environment. I've gone out with some people who are experts and shown me, oh, that's edible, and that's edible, and that's edible, But in any case, I learned a lot of years of scientific study that Skipper never really lived on that island. Well, it's nice you guys haven't heard me speak before, so I can tell the same joke I've been saying for like 10 years. Same jokes over and over again, you still get, well, that's good. It's smiling and laughing makes you live longer anyway, even if the joke is bad. Just smile and laugh, Now, the fiber in food also gets fermented by bacteria in the gut, and fiber is a prebiotic and helps grow the gram-positive beneficial bacteria. And it creates the short-chain fatty acids, predominantly butyrate. And butyrate is the main fatty acid that regulates the apostat and the hypothalamus, so that your appetite is ratcheted down the more fiber you eat, because the butyrate signals your brain to eat less food. So when you're eating low-fiber food, there's no stimulation to stop eating. It just keeps, and matter of fact, when you eat foods that are where the fiber's removed, like white flour and oils, it has the opposite effect to make you want to eat more food. Let me just describe what I'm saying for a minute. Because let's say I was having a buffet here at the front of the room. Are we having a buffet later here at the front of the room? Yeah, okay.
The other house.
Okay. And as you guys are waiting to get the food at the buffet, I'm going to give you a tablespoon of olive oil to take while you're waiting in line. That's 120 calories per tablespoon. And then we're going to have the scientists here measure how much food you take and how much food you eat. And they'll ascertain whether you reduced your intake of calories by 120 calories because you had that 120 extra calories coming to the buffet. Did you follow me? And they'll find that you did not reduce your calories by 120 because the olive oil is absorbed into the bloodstream so rapidly, it doesn't stay in the stomach. It has no fiber to hold it. It goes right through you. As a matter of fact, it gets absorbed in 3 to 5 minutes. They say 3 to 5 minutes from the lips to the hips. Once it's there, it's not coming off that easily. Now, for you guys in waiting online, you didn't get the olive oil. I gave you a 60-calorie apple. But the scientists figured out that because the apple has fiber and occupies space and has nutrient receptors, that you ate 60 calories less at the buffet. So the apple, because you had the apple in advance, it didn't make you have 60 calories extra, you just ate 60 calories less of something else. But what if instead of giving you the 1 tablespoon of olive oil, what if I gave you a tablespoon of olive oil that you weren't allowed to eat until you got up to the buffet and you could pour it over your food? Or what if I poured up 120 calories on the food at the buffet for you? So I mixed a little oil in with the food, then how many extra calories, hidden calories would you have consumed? 120, right? No. You see, because oil is absorbed into the bloodstream so rapidly. Do you know what the word bolus means? It means instead of the doctor giving you the medication through an IV drip coming into slowly over hours, they take a needle and they inject it into you all at once. Bolus is right in. When you get calories that flood the bloodstream so rapidly, that signals dopamine in the brain and make the same centers of the brain that are stimulated by opiates, like cocaine or heroin. So when you have a concentrated calorie, like a fast food that rushes into the bloodstream so rapidly, like oil, it makes you want to eat more food because it triggers opiate receptors in the brain, and you want to have more of that, you want to be stimulated. So when you put that extra oil on your food, instead of increasing your calories by 120, you increased your calories by 200. Did you follow that? And with science determining how much food you're eating, you got even more calories. Oil is an appetite stimulant. What I'm saying to you right now is that olive oil causes breast cancer. Got that? Why am I saying that? Why am I saying that olive oil causes breast cancer? Right, because The Americans eat about 400 to 500 extra calories of oil a day, increasing their appetite and making them get overweight. And the whole population is overweight. And the more oil they eat, the more overweight they get. And the more overweight they get, the more they're prone for cancer. If we're going to get people that have lower rates of cancer, we have to look at removing some calories from the diet. To get the cancer-promoting effects of fat off your body, you have to remove some non-nutritive calories and remove them. So the more oil you eat, the heavier you are, and the more heavier you are, the higher risk of breast cancer. And the major contributor to fat is oil. It's a major contributor to fat on the body, especially the way it's used in the modern world, where we're eating 1,000 times consumption of oils than they had 100 years ago. So G-bombs, the greens and the beans and the onions and the mushrooms and the berries and the seeds, are those foods that show the most powerful association in scientific studies to reduce rates of common cancers. We can throw a dart at any of those foods and pick and describe numerous studies that show, for example, that like flax seeds, that women with breast cancer followed for 10 years had a 71% lower rate of recurrence from breast cancer because they had a little bit of lignin in their diet from seeds every day. Or mushrooms, where women were given mushrooms, women who had 10 grams of mushrooms on the average per day had a 64% lower risk of developing breast cancer compared to women not having mushrooms. In other words, there's a lot of studies on all those foods showing tremendous beneficial effects, which I'm not going to go into today. Rather, I'm going to go into this slide instead, which reinforces what you're learning so far from me today. It says that, I'll help you understand it. It's talking about this triage effect. Do you know what the word triage means? Anybody? What does it mean? Right. Exactly what Wendy is saying. I know everybody's name here, by the way. What Wendy is saying is that the word triage means you separate it by priority, so the people in need the most care get cared for. The emergency need to get cared right away, and people who really could be okay with waiting, let them wait. So what the body does the same thing. With a certain amount of nutrients it takes in, it triages the nutrients for its immediate needs, like enough vitamin C not to get scurvy, or enough niacin not to get pellagra. But the amount of vitamin C not to get scurvy is not going to leave enough nutrients to take care of your longevity proteins, to protect your DNA to age into 100 years old. It's just going to be enough not to be sick right now. Your body triages the nutrients for its immediate needs and for reproductive needs, so we can reproduce the species, but it's not going to make you live a long time. The RDI for vitamin K is about 150 micrograms a day. 150 micrograms per day. How much vitamin K is in a nutritarian diet rich in greens and beans and mushrooms and onions? How many vitamin K do we get? About 1,500, about 10 times the RDI. The RDI is enough to meet your immediate needs, but it's not going to be an ideal amount that's going to help you slow aging and protect against osteoporosis and protect your muscle and protect against calcification development and not things that might damage your aging. The body will sacrifice your later life and create all kinds of problems down the road just because your diet is so weak and deficient, and it's just going to handle its own immediate problems. It'll triage those nutrients to its immediate needs. The body makes certain, I'm afraid to walk over here. The body makes certain, the body makes certain longevity proteins that stabilizes our telomeres from aging and stabilizes our maintains our stem cells and help us prepare for our later years in great health, like in longevity proteins like SIRT1 or AMP kinase or AMPK. That these proteins built up by an excellent level of nutrients, not by marginal levels of nutrients. We need a broad exposure to phytochemicals, and we start to build up these longevity proteins that increase DNA repair, that accelerate and enable autophagy, which means that spent particles of mitochondria that are being damaged as you're aging could build up and congest cells and cause disease, but they're removed and shoot up, and senescent cells are then replaced by new stem cells, and your body keeps itself living younger and healthier, and it prevents oxidative damage. In other words, all these are important factors to measure, even though they're research tools. They're important factors to measure to see that the person is really going to be living to be 100 years old and not dead at 60 or 65. And they're related to lower rates of chronic disease. You have good longevity proteins, you're not getting high blood pressure and dementia and all kinds of osteoarthritis. And what are the factors that accelerate and elevate these longevity proteins that cause us to age slower and protect our telomeres and stem cells as we age? Those factors are determined to be three main factors that accelerate aging. Number one are phytochemical exposure. That means the color of the plants and the skins of plant foods that you eat. Organic plant foods and eat their skins with all phytochemicals. Number two, exercise. And number three, caloric restriction. Eating less calories. That's it. Three main factors accelerating longevity, protein, slowing aging. And then there's proteins that accelerate aging. These decelerate aging, make you live longer. And there's a seesaw relationship between AMP kinase and mTOR. mTOR elevates, of course, is going to shorten your lifespan. When you lift MP kinase, MPK, mTOR goes down. mTOR is elevated in 100% of invasive cancers, 100%. You have high mTOR, you're in trouble. It's associated with cell proliferation, insulin resistance, cancer-promoting genes, and allowing those genetic defects to express themselves. Because those are suppressed, those defects in your genes are suppressed by the good diets and everything, by the good foods. And of course, high animal protein, excessive calories, high glycemic carbohydrates, accelerate mTOR, the opposite of what accelerates longevity proteins. We have this seesaw relationship between life and death. It's up to you. You guys understand this slide? Now, the second principle of the nutritarian diet, the second principle, is your diet has to be hormonally favorable. It's not good enough to be rich in nutrients. You could be eating a diet, a lot of kale and strawberries and berries and mushrooms. You're still going to have a life cut short if your diet is hormonally unfavorable. And the main hormones we're talking about here are estrogen, which we talked about, right? High levels of estrogen, because estrogen doesn't just cause breast cancer, it also increases risk of prostate cancer. And, of course, insulin and IGF-1. And we talked about insulin a lot already, right? So you eat foods that promote a lot of insulin and IGF-1, and you're in trouble. So the rate at which glucose enters the bloodstream, the speed at which it rushes to the bloodstream, is called the glycemic load of that food, how fast it enters the bloodstream. And, of course, foods that enter the bloodstream slowly are low glycemic. I'm taking the same chart, the same image with the peak here and the flat line here and say, I could use the same thing for fat. Right? I could use the same thing. Remember when I talked about, we had the person having the olive oil? We came into the buffet because the oil rushed into the bloodstream rapidly, whereas the beans and nuts, your calories would have entered the bloodstream slowly because the oil rushes into the bloodstream at 40 calories a minute. Sugar rushes in the bloodstream real fast too. Marshmallows, right? Maple syrup and honey and white flour and white bread and white rice and all these foods that flood the bloodstream very rapidly produce a huge insulin response. Now, when we ate the walnut versus the walnut oil, the fiber and the sterols and stanols in the walnut and the pistachio nut and the pecan bind the fat, so the fat is only allowed to enter the bloodstream at 1 or 2 calories a minute, not 30 or 40 calories a minute. The walnut oil versus the walnut are two completely different foods biologically. One floods the body with calories immediately, and the other takes hours to enter the bloodstream. Matter of fact, the fibers in nuts and seeds bind the fat so tightly that some of the fat actually stays bound to the fiber as it passes through in the toilet bowl, taking some of those calories with it. And there's an exchange mechanism between the capillaries in the villi, the lining of the blood vessels in your digestive tract, are putting blood going, serum is going in both directions. So these fats these fibers and sterols that attract fat from nuts and seeds suck some of the bad fat, oxidized LDL and saturated fats that are not good for you, out into the digestive tract, so you excrete that in the stool, in the toilet more. It takes the bad fats out of your body, allowing more usable, less dangerous fats to come in. So there's a complete different biological mechanism compared to sesame oil versus sesame seeds. I say sesame oil and you say makes you fat. And I say sesame seeds and you say makes you thin. Isn't that right? Pecan oil and you say, right. I say pecans. Right, now you got it. Now let's try this. Now, ready? Motor oil. I quit eating that stuff. I don't know about you. All right, thanks for allowing me to have fun. Okay, so going on to this glycemic idea of carbohydrates right now, we high glycemic like low diets, of course, push up insulin and other reactive compounds that make you gain weight, but they're associated with cancer and heart disease and gallbladder disease and dementia, and make us more insulin resistant, and also more saturated fat in the diet interferes with the cavelins, in other words, the little cave-like structures in our cell walls that hold the insulin receptors they're blocked by saturated fats. So when you eat more butter and other, coconut oil or ghee or whatever it is, you're making yourself more insulin resistant, which then makes higher levels of insulin being secreted. And when you're eating more animal protein in your diet too, the animal protein creates more gram-negative bacteria, which then these gram-negative bacteria produce more pro-inflammatory compounds like TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, which is a very powerful inflammatant, increasing risk of dementia, inflames the endothelium, increases risk of heart disease. But those TMAO, those inflammatory compounds, also make your insulin receptors more resistant to insulin, increasing insulin resistance. Some examples of some high glycemic carbohydrates are things like white rice and white potato and pasta and chocolate cake. Don't forget, chocolate cake is white. It just has that fake, fake tan. It's really white. It's not white bread, right? I always say the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead, right? Don't trust anything too white. Cocaine, cigarettes, white flour, right? You got it. Medium glycemic foods like intact grains and root vegetables and tropical fruits. And then we have some low glycemic carbohydrates like beans and most fruit and vegetables and most above ground vegetables and nuts and seeds and greens and all these very low glycemic plant foods. Particularly if we put plant foods on a hierarchical scale of quality, from the ones with the most nutrients at the top and the least nutrients per calorie at the bottom, or the most fiber at the top, or the most, and we look at resistant starch. I mean, resistant starch and slowly digestible starches are highest in beans, and beans have the most anti-cancer phytochemicals and fibers as well. What I'm saying right now is that compared to the carbohydrates in other foods, like potatoes and rice, let's say, the carbohydrates in the bean enters the bloodstream much more slowly. So it doesn't cause more of an insulin response, more of a less of an insulin. It doesn't need much insulin because you're only getting a couple of calories coming in per minute. You following that? And beans have the most fiber, and the fiber and resistant starch are what the bacteria in your gut live off of. So you grow more of the beneficial bacteria in the digestive tract because there's so much resistant starch. The resistant starch in beans are resistant to enzymatic degradation, so they're degraded by bacteria in the gut, not by digestive enzymes. So they're broken down, and because they're created, they're changed from their starch into fat in the gut, but that occurs so far down in the digestive tract that a lot of those resistant starch calories, about 90% of them, are lost. They don't get absorbed into the bloodstream. So when you eat that 100 calories of beans, your appetite was ratcheted down by 100 calories. You're satisfied for hours, but all those 100 calories never even come into the body. They're lost, which is good, not bad. But the bean carb-resistant starch was a prebiotic for the growth of bacteria. And now the growth of the bacteria that occurred from eating beans means you thicken the microbiome. You thicken that biofilm that covered the villi, lowering the glycemic effect of everything you eat. So when you have that mango for breakfast tomorrow morning, the glycemic load of that mango is reduced because you ate beans the day before. Scientists call that the second meal effect. What you eat later on is benefited by what you ate previously, reducing the glycemic effect of that. And there are 4 foods, 2 raw foods and 2 cooked foods. The 2 raw foods that have the most effect on the second meal effect, lowering the speed of glucose into the bloodstream, the 2 raw foods with the most power are raw green vegetables and raw onion or scallion. And the 2 cooked food with the most power to activate the second meal effect are cooked mushrooms and cooked beans. Beans, mushrooms, onions, and greens, right? Okay, the other hormone we're talking about here is IGF-1, or insulin-like growth factor 1, because too much IGF-1, we know this is a powerful growth-promoting hormone, and too much accelerates growth. We don't want to be growing too rapidly when we're adults, because things will start to grow that shouldn't be growing. And higher levels of IGF-1 increase risk of cancer, and lower levels reduce oxidative damage and slow aging of the body and aging of the brain. Lower levels of IGF-1 slow aging. We want our IGF-1 to be low as possible through our middle life ages. Between the ages of 20 and 70, we want our IGF-1 as low as possible. And food and IGF-1. Well, animal protein raises IGF-1 more than sugar does, even though sugar does raise it. But why does plant protein? What if I give you like a lot of high protein plant foods, like soybeans or hemp seeds, or broccoli is super high in protein? I give you a meal like a broccoli, soybean, and hemp seeds, super high protein meal. How come that doesn't raise IGF-1 like eating a piece of meat did? Well, you get all the protein you need from those plants, but they're not all biologically complete. The IGF-1 is biologically complete. So when the protein is all biologically complete coming to the bloodstream, it enters the bloodstream, and the body can't burn it off, and it doesn't store protein very well as fat, so it turns the extra complete protein into hormone. And the excess hormone is going to damage you and increase risk of replication, growth, and cancer. When you get your protein from plants, on the other hand, the body has to complete it, and it takes a few time to complete it. Has to match and get the levels even to make the hormone. And it can, if you just had an imbalance of protein in that meal, there's stored protein and amino acids in the interstitial lining of the villi, and there's all types of ways the body will wait till more protein comes in and hold on to it. If it's a protein amino acid deficient, it'll even digest some of the bacteria in the gut if it needs to, or digest some of the epithelial cells, the sloughed off epithelial cells on your villi lining that slough off into the. So there's all types of mechanisms via which the body can complete its proteins. But the body doesn't willy-nilly complete more protein than it needs. It only completes the protein it needs to utilize for its services, for its health. It's not going to start making excess of stuff it doesn't need just to complete the protein you ate. Did you follow that? The plant proteins are so much more favorable than not complete, because now we're not over-completing proteins and over-manufacturing hormones that could be promoting cellular replication, excessive growth. I don't want to eat a diet that enables me to become 240 pounds. I don't want to be a super power lifter and get so big and muscular, because to eat that diet, to have gotten that big, I would have needed to intensely and cause excessive amount of growth hormone stimulation that would have shortened my lifespan. You following me? So IGF-1 and pooled data from multiple studies show there's no controversy. Higher levels are increased with higher levels of colon cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. Okay, I'm just pausing now to see where I am time-wise. I know I'm on a schedule here. I think I should talk a little faster now. Like 10 minutes, you think? Okay. I'm going to skip through some of these slides, because I want to leave some time for doing some Q&A time, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this slide just demonstrates that in this large study of, I think it was 44,000 people, they tracked how much animal protein they ate and found that those who were in the highest ranges had a 60% increased risk of cardiovascular death. But they saw a 5% increase in heart attack rate for every 2-point score higher in animal product score. They went up the scale of eating more animal products. Because like a 1 was like a vegan diet, and a 20 was like an Atkins or a ketogenic diet. We're seeing more evidence on long-term studies today on how dangerous the paleo diets and these keto diets are. Because we have to give studies more credence that use large numbers of people that go on for decades and look at hard endpoints like death. And we have a lot of these studies right now. So here's a study on cruciferous vegetables and longevity, more than 100,000 Chinese adults, showing in the highest quintile of cruciferous vegetable intake, we found the longest lived Chinese adults. and the highest green vegetable intake. Likewise, the same thing, we look at studies on nuts and seeds, right? In all the major studies on nuts and seeds, we see in the highest consumers have a dramatic reduction in all-cause mortality and dramatic effects to enhance lifespan. The most powerful evidence, I think, is probably the Seventh-day Adventist studies, because we had a 12-year study published in 2001 showed the longest life was in the nut-eating, people who were low on, of course, not eating animal products, who ate nuts and seeds, right, who lived the longest. And then that study came out, the Adventist Health Study 2 came out in March of 2018, where they had more than 81,000 individuals followed for more years, dividing the nut and seed intake among Seventh-day Adventists. And because many of these Seventh-day Adventists are vegans or vegetarians, or they eat very little animal products, it wasn't replacement calories. They weren't cutting out meat and eating more nuts. They were just people who were eating nuts versus not eating nuts. And they found that in the highest quintile of nut and seed consumption, compared to the lowest quintile, had a 40% lower risk of cardiovascular death and a large degree of overall mortality. And the same thing was confirmed in a meta-analysis of 25 different studies examining the issue of one serving a day, also had a 39% cardiovascular death. The meta-analysis published in 2015 came up with almost the exact same results as the Adventist Health Study 2 did on showing the dramatic effects of reduction in cardiovascular deaths and all-cause mortality. And what I'm saying is almost every study looking at this issue shows tremendous increase in lifespan eating nuts and seeds, and you don't get the same benefit from eating olive oil or oil, and you can't eat oil and nuts and seeds, a source of fat. What I'm saying is make your salad dressings using nuts and seeds and tomato sauce and vinegar, and nuts and seeds and, orange juice and sesame seeds, not oil and vinegar. It's nuts and seeds blended with vinegar. We have much better dramatic benefits when you make salad dressing when using oil. And also when you cook with oil and you heat oil, it causes carcinogenic and rancid changes, right? Now, that doesn't mean that the Previmid study didn't show that there was some benefit to using olive oil compared to using butter, right? So in other words, so the people in the Previmid study had some benefit from using olive oil, but when they found those people switched to nuts and seeds, it reduced cardiovascular deaths by another 50%. Do you follow what I'm saying? We don't buy a car by comparing it to a junkyard wreck. Just because you're better than the American diet doesn't mean it's a good diet. The Mediterranean diet does not represent a good diet. It's just better than the way Americans are eating. They're still using way too much oil, and they also have a lot of heart disease, cancers, and overweight people over there. It's not a longevity society. Even in Sardinia, one of the blue zones over there, the amount of centenarians in Sardinia is less than 2%, and it was less than like 8% were living past 90. It's not like they're getting super lifespan there. So more greens, more beans, more nuts and seeds, because means a dramatic lowering of the glycemic load of your diet and the ability to improve diabetic and cardiovascular parameters and live longer and live slower. And some fat in the meal is helpful and effective at helping absorb some beneficial anti-cancer compounds like carotenoids, tocotrienols, tocopherols, terpenes, a lot of beneficial phytochemicals that are absorbed more efficiently with fat in the meal. And some of these low-fat, nut-avoiding vegans are putting themselves at increased risk of many different diseases. So in other words, a balanced plant-based diet that's not excessive or radical to trying to exclude all fat is much safer and protective for the brain, too, as we age. So the nutritarian pyramid, of course, has vegetables at the base. We eat a large variety of food, avoids empty calorie foods and oil, and uses little or no animal products. In studies, this type of high nutrient diet has been shown to lower cholesterol as powerfully or more powerful than statin drugs, but more effective at wiping out oxidized LDL and lowering blood pressure. Here's a study on 443 people who dropped their blood pressure by an average of 26 points. And so the prescription here, which Asha got on the prescription pad, I don't know if I just wrote fruits and vegetables, but if I do it all over again, it would say eat at least a half a cup of beans a day in a soup or a stew. Eat a big salad every once, a large salad as a main dish at least once a day. Have at least 3 fresh fruits a day. Have at least 1.5 ounces of raw nuts and seeds a day. eat some steamed or wok greens every day, and eat some mushrooms or onions every day. There's the prescription. Otherwise, you can take drugs from your doctors, which I call permission slips. Because now you have permission. You can, right, these drugs make you think you're okay. You can keep eating fast food and hot dogs and French fries. What does one serving of fast food French fries do to you? Not too bad, just one serving a week. What's wrong with that? Eat healthy the rest of the week. Well, one serving of commercial French fries a week increases the risk of breast cancer by 26%. Just one serving a week. Even moderate consumption of fast food is dangerous. Even 2 servings a week of commercial baked goods like croissants or donuts or bagels, or 1 serving of fast food and 1 serving of fast food increases risk of developing depression through your life by more than 50%. Just 1 serving a week. With the average American, you get 4 to 6 servings of commercial baked goods or fast food. That makes the American population, those that are not depressed, like you guys. Some of you. It makes people dysthymic. You know what that means? They're not really clinically depressed, but they're not really excited about life either.
What was the word?
Dysthymic. It means that they're kind of a flat affect. They have no care about anything. They live just to go to the next meal or drink, or go out drinking, go out smoking or snorting, but they're not really enjoying life. They're just trying to stimulate themselves to get by. You know, most Americans aren't too thrilled about living, and their diet makes them crazy. Because when you're an addict, it lowers your intelligence. The more you stimulate the brain with dopamine, and the more you eat the high glycemic carbohydrates and all your food and eating fried foods and having all the low nutrient foods that people are eating, it makes you driven to overconsume calories and go after brain stimulation. But it also makes you more angry, makes you less hopeful, and can increase your risk of mental illness. Why do you think nobody's talking about this when people are shooting up nightclubs and when people are going crazy and killing other people? Nobody's talking about how the fast food and the candy. You know, there's a link in this. There's a study that showed that children who were fed candy and marshmallows and desserts once a day or more in their childhood have a 60% chance of becoming a violent criminal by the age of 40. The highest consumers of sweets and candy in their youth are where we'll get all these people put in prison. All right, wrapping this up, here's Jody, who reversed her psoriatic arthritis. Here's some people. Here's John Pelikowski, who came to me as a patient in 1994. That's about when I started my medical practice. 1991, I think I did. So just 3 years after I started medical practice, he came to me with chest pain then. And back then, people just thought I was crazy. Right? Now they know I'm crazy. But anyway, I convinced him not to go after his cardiologist that he needed angioplasty and stent placement. I convinced him not to do it. 3 months later, he went back with his stress test improved, and the cardiologist was shocked how much better he got. He's the guy on the right, by the way. And here he is now in 2019 at age 97 with no heart disease and normal blood pressure. He's well all these years, still not dead. Can't even get these people to die. Actually, I just spoke up to him on the phone last week or a couple of weeks ago. He's chopping wood in his backyard and climbing on his roof. But anyway, so people lose weight, they feel better and happier. Here's Steve and Tara. She weighed 226, he weighed 447. The first year they started the diet, Tara lost 80 pounds, Steve lost 220 that first year. Right? And her daughter Chloe lost 32 pounds and got her 9-year-old and got rid of her asthma. But of course, he got rid of his diabetes and his sleep apnea, and she got rid of her sinus infections and her allergies. But you know they look like different people, right? But you know who's really thrilled about this? Like super duper thrilled? Yeah, the dog. Take a look. He finally has room to sit in the car. And I know you maybe can't see this that clearly, but some of these people that have gotten their health back and gotten their, disease, getting rid of their chronic illnesses. Here's Emily who lost about 100 pounds in a year. But look at her face 1 year later. Look at her skin tone, her skin color, the happiness quotient in her. But you can see the texture of her skin, the color of her skin. right? We're seeing that people are actually growing younger, getting younger. So we're talking here about not living longer without a deteriorating quality of life. Not just living longer, but living longer with a full and happy play span, so you can really live your life and enjoy it to your later years. And what I'm talking about today is a lot talked about in some of these things we're talking about on food addiction and getting rid of yo-yo dieting and emotional overeating. Is for the person who's really troubled with emotional overeating and diet and yo-yo dieting, and then I'm recommending my book, The End of Dieting, which talks more about the emotional help and how food addictions develop and what you can do to help direct yourself so this becomes fun, doable, and the way you prefer to eat. Now, for those for those food addicts and people who are in trouble, I have a retreat now in San Diego where people come and stay with me for 2 to 3 months. And for people who are really, how a person with a cocaine addicted, they need to go away to get away from their cocaine. Some people really need to get away from their negative environment where they're being tempted and they can't control their behavior. It's not, we certainly want to give people all the tools they need, but if it really becomes impossible, at least I have really been excited about being able to take people in need and put them in a nice place for a couple months, and you'd be amazing how people no longer desire their trigger, their illicit love affair with these disease-causing deadly foods when they're separated them from a long time, and they're able to reclaim their taste buds, get their health back, get the psychological counseling and care they need. It becomes a real opportunity for them to change their life and start on a completely new path. So before I had one woman, her name was Nicole, who came there, and she lost 50 pounds in the first 6 weeks. But then the year she went home, she lost another 100 pounds. So the people are learning how to keep it going. They're learning how to duplicate it so they can learn it there and really make sure they can stick on the program. All right, well, enjoy talking to you guys. My website, drfuhrman.com, you have the ability to communicate with me there and get more camaraderie with other people utilizing these methods. And my Nutritional Research Foundation at nutritionalresearch.org is our nonprofit organization where we're helping to raise money for nutritional research. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Fuhrman. Do you have time for a few questions?
Yes, same here.
Okay. Yes, a few questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rice, and thank you, Dr. Fuhrman. I have a very simple question for you, so please help me. As a first-timer, what is one nutritional serving? And just help me with my fist, like how much fits in here and how many of these fists should I eat a day? And the second follow-up question to that is...
Fists of what?
How many fists of, let's say, nuts? So one serving is how much, sir?
An ounce?
Oh, yeah. One serving a day of, let's say, nuts is how many fists of nuts for me?
Fists? Well, it's about 1 ounce is about a third of a cup. Like a handful. Yeah.
So 1 handful of nuts is what I need to eat a day.
Yes.
Is that right?
But in addition to that, you should have at least a tablespoon of either flax or chia or hemp every day. Hemp seeds, flax seeds, or chia seeds, in addition to your nuts or seeds. Because you want to have some of those omega-3 high lignin nuts or seeds that have beneficial anti-cancer effects. So I'm saying that it's not, that you can have an ounce of nuts every day, that's great, but in addition to that, have at least a tablespoon of those seeds, either flax seeds or chia seeds or hemp seeds, to get those omega-3s and those other beneficial lignins. How many of you have either like flax seeds or chia, some of that every day? Oh, so you know there's some benefit to that. Good. Okay.
And just one other question. The amaranth seed found in Bolivia, any thoughts on that? The amaranth seed? Amarnath.
Amaranth. Oh, it's a grain.
I'm sorry, amaranth.
Amaranth is a grain.
I'm
yes,
sorry.
intact grains like amaranth and quinoa.
Quinoa is in that family.
That's acceptable foods. Yeah, teff. You can have those are good, okay foods to eat. Yes, because we want most of your grain intake to be intact. Means you cooked it with water as opposed to made it into a flour and baked it. Because when you make it into a flour, you increase the glycemic load of the grain. We don't want to grind those grains into a flour and bake it in a bread. We prefer you to just put them in intact form and cook them in water, like cooked water cooked quinoa or amaranth, something like that. Yes?
Let's see. Hi, I'm Lisa.
I'm a member of a Eat to Live Facebook group, and there are hundreds of people in the group. And most of them post that, you know, they've lowered their cholesterol, but there's a small group, and I'm in that group, maybe 1% or so, who say that their cholesterol goes up or just stays the same, doesn't go down, and the bad cholesterol still stays high. What's going on?
Number one, that you have a store of unhealthy fat on your body, like saturated fats are not favorable. And for some people, they're susceptible to the breakdown of their own fat supply. In other words, as they're losing weight, they're still eating up saturated fats they've eaten in the past that are stored in their body. So they're still eating these unfavorable animal fats, part of their own body. They're their own favorable animal fats. Unfavorable animal fats are on them, and they're eating them up as they're losing weight. So when we see it for a certain number of people, while they're in the weight loss process, some of their cholesterol could even go up and become more unfavorable. Their diet is higher in saturated fat, and they don't start to see the cholesterol benefit until they've reached a favorable weight and they stay there. So the body stops burning off its own saturated fats. So it's possible that you still have not reached your ideal weight yet, and yo-yoing your weight up and down could be a negative factor exacerbating this. Let me say this clearly. I consider a nutritarian a person that's at their ideal weight, or a person that's losing weight at the rate of at least 1 kilogram a week. If you're not losing weight at 1 pound every 3 days, I don't consider you a nutritarian if you're overweight. You're either at your ideal weight or you're getting there. Because if you're not losing 1 kilogram a week, because we find that the measurement of the cytokines and estrogens and insulin resistance goes down and starts to become normal while the person is still overweight if they're losing weight at the rate of 2 pounds a week. And my experience with clients and guests over the years is that when they ate the real healthy diet and they're not overeating, they're chewing their food really well, they're eating the right amount of food, and then they're going to be losing weight at that rate if they're overweight. There's usually something they're doing wrong if they're not, and if they're not, we have to tweak their diet accordingly so they do so. So I have to look at what you're doing and see if we can tweak it and make it more optimized.
You already addressed this question during your talk, and I was wondering if you had any extra thoughts about it. We all know about the high percentage of people go off that diet. They try it, they feel great, but after a year or so they go off it. And I wonder if you have any and I'm one of them, by the way. If you have any additional thoughts on why people go off or can't stay on it.
Well, there's so many different reasons why. I mean, I can't really. Yeah, I could think of a lot of them now, but I don't really. But the main reason is it's the lack of support by family, friends, and social environment, because we're social herd animals. And you're very, to live differently, you need a tremendous amount of self-esteem and purpose in life, because you're very much affected you're too much affected most often by what people, how you look to them, trying to please them, trying to be like them. But I think if your motivation in life has to change a little bit, so instead of trying to meet other people's approval or please other people, you feel that this exposes you to the ability to actually be a role model, and now you can care for other people more, have beneficial effect on them as well as yourself, and appreciate the world around you more, and even appreciate natural foods more. The beauty and blessing of natural foods that are so stunningly or what nature has produced for us. So I don't really, I think it's the fact that you've been so miseducated, misinformed, and you're still under that same social umbrella that's difficult for you to move yourself away from. I don't think it's primarily biological, but I don't see that people who it's much easier if you had a family living this way. If you came in and lived in my house, for example, you lived with me, you wouldn't find that difficulty. You would just be living the way we're all living, and we're getting a lot of fun doing it. We'd be all gardening together, and you'd be, wow, look at that yellow passion fruit. Did you eat a yellow passion fruit with those seeds in it? It's so incredible. I mean, we'd be like, wow, it's so beautiful. The food is so delicious. You just, try to surround yourself with people that are going to support you. And we have to creatively and intelligently have a good effect on other people, have goodwill for others, and take that and take that person. When you're not like affected by what other people are saying or thinking, and you're not trying to impress anybody, it gets much easier. You know what I mean? And then you're just thinking, okay, I have to take care of myself, and I have to use creative intelligence to do what's goodwill for this other person as well. You follow me? So ratchet up your intensity. You could do this.
Dr. Fuhrman and Dr. Weiss, and I think there's Dr. Clapper here. I just want to thank all of you for all the videos.
Dr. Stoll is in the back of the room, too.
I'm not sure I've ever heard of Dr. Stoll. Thank you.
This is,
I'm just awestruck by what's here today. But my question is,
isn't it incredible that that all these people came here to support Dr. Weiss, and this is incredible. Yeah.
people have information I can learn. You mentioned flax seeds. I stopped taking omega-3 oils, fish oil, to get omega-3s from flax seeds. I'm concerned because I've heard things about flax seeds and prostate health. Is there anything about that? Is that a myth? Is that something to be concerned about?
I'll answer the question. So one concern about a vegan diet is that a vegan diet doesn't have enough B12, as do animal products, to maintain your brain and your health for the rest of your life. So you have to be exposed to adequate B12. Most vegans, the vast majority of them, need to take a higher dose of B12, even more than the RDI, to make sure they're guaranteeing their brain protection with aging. Now, the other nutrient that's protective for brain health as we age, that's not adequate on a vegan diet, is DHA. DHA and EPA are commonly known as fish oil. The body can make EPA and DHA from ALA, which comes from flax seeds, and you're saying flaxseed oil, walnuts, green vegetables have ALA in them. But the ability to convert that ALA into EPA and then DHA is variable from person to person. Some people convert it more readily, and other people don't. So because of my experience over the last 30 years of finding some vegans who developed dementia or depression and measuring their DHA levels and found them to be very low, I got concerned that some peoples don't convert as well. So we did do a study on 166 vegans to see how many of them adequately made enough DHA from who were not supplementing that, right? They were just, and we found that about half of them were insufficient, but about 25% were severely deficient, where the deficiencies were so severe they were at the levels where we see brain shrinkage with aging and dementia. So what I'm saying to you right now is that taking flaxseed or flaxseed oil for ALA is not going to assure and guarantee you're going to have an adequate brain function if you live to be 95 or 100 years old. That's not good enough. You have to take DHA or EPA, and they make vegan EPA and DHA. You don't have to take, it's better than, you don't have to take fish oil, right? And too much of the ALA or too much of the flaxseed oil has the same, we're talking here about oil. To get enough ALA, because the conversion is only 2%, you have to take a lot of oil to get that little bit of percent. You have to take a lot of calories to get that little bit of, conversion. Whereas if you take DHA, just to get a little tiny bit because it's already converted already. The conversion rate's about 2%. So I don't know how that relates to your question. I am saying that don't take flaxseed oil, eat flax seeds, because the whole seed has the lignans and the sterols and other beneficial anti-cancer ingredients, and by taking the oil, you're not getting the cancer protection you would have gotten had you eaten the whole ground flaxseed or chia seed. So I'm recommending the ground flax or chia seeds with a source of vegan omega-3 fatty acid, like fish oil, but it's a vegan source of those same compounds. Does that adequately answer your question?
I think so, yes, thank you.
Okay, sure.
So I have arthritis, and I went vegan so I could get off my medicine. So the only thing is I really do like vegan chicken. Is that okay?
Do you mean chickens that eat vegan diet? Is that what you meant? I like those non-plant milks, but I was thinking of, like, alligator milk might be good. Or I was thinking of chicken milk. You know what you do? You take the chicken, you put it in a blender, you turn it on with a little bit of, with a date and a little bit of vanilla bean powder. Is that what she was referring to? Okay, sorry, I'm just making stupid jokes. Vegan chicken. I don't know. I never had that. But to me, that sounds like some kind of processed food that's made with isolated soy protein. It's heavily seasoned and spiced. It's heavily seasoned with, you know, salts and other artificial ingredients. It doesn't sound like a healthy food to me. But I'm so proud of you that you're getting rid of your arthritis. I did have. That's really great. And you can become an incredible. You can become an incredible. Healthy chef where you learn how to make the healthy foods taste great and make recipes that you love and taste delicious and make this really exciting. And it's fun to do that in the kitchen so you can figure out like a healthy version of the unhealthy foods. You know what I mean? I'm sure we could talk about that, how to make some really incredibly delicious, healthy stuff that you'll love. Fantastic.
Wonderful.
And when you think of that, what a role model for the thousands of children across the United States suffering and on drugs that are very dangerous and suffering with pain and the hardship of disease for the rest of their life, and being a role model and to show that this can be reversed and you could do it. You know, terrific.
Okay, wonderful, Dr. Fuhrman. Thank you so much. You know, for all of us who signed up for the potluck, it's just about to start, and so we can sample firsthand these delicious whole plant foods. I just wanted to make this one announcement. You know, we insisted upon holding these events so that they could be free and open to the public, so people could have access to this information. Because sometimes in the world we live in, this information is subverted and covered up. So it is our goal to always make these open and free to the public. And I just want to thank Dr. Fuhrman for donating his time today and his energies and all of his knowledge and expertise. I also want to say that these events could not have taken place without a massive effort of volunteers who have been invisible. Sometimes you see them telling you where to park, and sometimes you'll see them taking your dishes or the farm stand, but they were essential to having today come off, and I just want to read their names. Anthony, Kathy, Evan, Henry Masiello family. Wendy Yergosky, Karina Lamalfa, Sarah Zayed, Asha and Pankaj Gala, Nora Puglisi, our farm manager, and her husband, the sound man, Mark Mandler, Karen Spiridakis, and Glenn, Kim Rogers, Rose Lopiano, Sean Downs, Brooke Shanley, and Robert Stolpe. Thank you for the big surprise of coming here and taking the pictures today. Okay, let's eat.